Watching Newsfeed AM, let's get into this discussion now. Over the years, South African roads have seen an increase in road fatalities with an estimated 25 deaths per 100,000 people. There is no question that road safety needs to be prioritized and tackled from a variety of fronts. Now, as the festive season approaches, more efforts are being put in place to ensure safety on our roads. Let's try and get more now, and we speak to the South African National Roads Agency and what it is that they will be doing this festive season. The agency's Northern Region Manager is Progress Hlahla, and he speaks to us via the virtual platform. Mr. Hlahla, thank you very much for your time. Before we get into this conversation, just explain to us, when you say you are the Northern Region Manager, what provinces are incorporated in that Northern Region?
Good morning to you and the viewers, and thank you so much for this opportunity. So SANRAL is divided into 4 regions, which more or less follow the cardinal points or the direction points. So in the north or the northern region, we actually manage the network in Mpumalanga, Gauteng, Limpopo, and the northwest. So this is more or less around 9,500 kilometers of the national road network.
Okay. And then let's talk about the discussion, pardon me there. The festive season is upon us. In fact, some people may have started traveling already around the country. The safety campaigns, what is it that you can tell South Africans about safety on the road?
Yes, so during this period, almost every year, we start to see a ramp up in the traffic that we have on our networks. So I've been driving the network, and a lot of other engineers who work for SANRAL also have been doing the same, just to assess the readiness of the network to actually receive the additional volumes of traffic. And I think assure our travelers that a lot of work has actually gone in to ensuring that the roads themselves are actually ready to receive all the holiday-making traffic, and everyone who will be traveling to their destinations can look forward to navigable roads that we've actually been busy with. Now, we are running quite a number of campaigns, and these campaigns actually assist us in ensuring that all our travelers are aware of the need to travel safely. So you would have noticed usually on the televisions that there are adverts around what we call the war campaign, which actually discourages drinking and driving and encourages people to use alternative means of transport should they find themselves holiday making or drinking and so on. We are also running some physical campaigns where we have on certain rest stops, or we can call them filling stations, where there will be a marquee with SANRAL employees there, engaging drivers, giving them information about how they can be safe, encouraging them to take the regular rest and so on, so that they do not actually drive for extended periods of time without any actual rest. We also, on our various social media platforms, including on Twitter, on Facebook, and all the other platforms, we are ramping up the messaging around road safety. So we hope we can target the much younger audience, which spends a significant amount of their time on social media. So this is why we've actually looked into this avenue as well. We hope with all the messaging that is going out there, having come out of the October Transport Month, of course, that there would be a lot more effort made by our travelers to make sure that they actually obey the rules of the road and take the necessary breaks as they drive to their various destinations.
Yeah. So while safety perhaps may be the majority of the time in the hands of the driver, the state of the roads may not perhaps be something that the driver is prepared for. How would you describe South African roads as holidaymakers start making their way? Can we be assured that the roads, the stretch of roads, are indeed in a good state?
So to respond to you, if you look at the accident data and the reports that are done, especially by the Road Traffic Management Corporation or the RTMC, you will notice that up to 85% of accidents are actually caused by driver behavior. The remaining 15% can be looked at in terms of the environmental factors, including, for example, the condition of the road. So if we are going to impact significantly on the road accidents or the deaths that result from them, then the focus actually needs to be on driver behavior. But having said that, the national roads themselves, which we actually manage, the majority of them, they actually are in a very good state. So you realize that we use what we call an overall condition index, which is an engineering tool that we use to measure the condition of the pavement or of the road itself. So when you look at the statistics that we have and the data we've gathered, you realize that the national road network actually, most of them are in a fair to a good, to even very good condition. We are aware that for other authorities that there has been a bit of a challenge in terms of maybe dealing with potholes. Hence, the minister launched the Operation of Alazonge, where he brings all the spheres of government together to work towards closing all the potholes. So this is an ongoing exercise, and some of the roads may not have reached the condition that we want them to reach, especially those that we are not managing actively. But we in the background are engaging with the various authorities to make sure all the work that needs to go into making these roads ready is actually happening at the moment.
Yeah, this may be not in SANRAL's domain, but I suppose it's still a question that I think is worthy of asking you. The visibility of law enforcement officers on the roads, does that help based on previous experience, particularly when it comes to the festive season, the visibility of police officers on our roads? Does that at least change driver behavior?
The answer is yes, and we do need a lot more presence of law enforcement on our network. We are aware that obviously when you have got roadblocks, it impacts on the mobility, it impacts on the time that it takes for a person to get from destination A to B. But overall, the benefit everyone gets from having law enforcement being present is actually quite significant. So we are hoping that as we go into the festive season, that there is a lot more visibility of law enforcement. But in the background, from SANRAL's side, we are also looking at using other technologically advanced tools in partnership with law enforcement to ensure that we do a lot more work to ensure, for example, that people stick to speed limits over stretches of road, to ensure that where we have got cameras on the network, we assist where we can in ensuring that everyone behaves in the right manner. So this is important because sometimes you have got families that are traveling who are impacted by those that travel recklessly on the road. So one needs to do whatever they can to mitigate or to at least prevent this from occurring. So there is a direct linkage between the presence of law enforcement on the road and the behavior that drivers actually exhibit on the network, which again, like we indicated earlier, is the major cause of accidents, is driver behavior. So once you address that through law enforcement, for example, as one tool, you actually see a lot of reduction in the number of incidents and accidents that one ends up with on the road.
Yeah. Final question, sir. The presence of these massive trucks, the hauling trucks on our roads, it has become something of a nightmare in recent times. Is there something that is being done to either have trucks almost move on a dedicated lane whilst smaller cars are able to use perhaps other lanes? I'm simply saying this given the number of accidents we have seen caused by trucks.
Yes, so the answer to that is both maybe a long-term and a short-term response. In the short term, where we have the network that allows, for example, 2 lanes in a certain direction or a dualized carriageway, the expectation is the slower moving vehicles must always keep the outer left lane. In this instance, for example, trucks must stick to the outer lanes. And you will see on some of our networks, if you drive, for example, around the Gauteng freeway, that it indicates that some of those lanes trucks are not allowed into, and they need to actually travel on the slower lanes. So this is ongoing, and this requires law enforcement to ensure that it is actually adhered to. But long term, there's a bit of work we are doing. Given the significant increase in the truck volumes we see, it has had obviously an impact on the pavement conditions of many roads, not only SANRAL roads, but all roads Hence, I think your question earlier about potholes and so on. So there is a lot more work that needs to go into the redesign where we need to rehabilitate some of these roads. And where possible, we must provide what we call climbing lanes, or lanes for slower moving vehicles to allow other vehicles to be able to pass on the right and actually get to their destinations faster. So on our networks, there's a lot of work going on, especially the network that we received from the provincial authorities when they were transferred to SANRAL. We are looking at redesigning a significant portion of that network to allow for this movement so that at least those with faster vehicles are not stuck behind trucks, which leads to frustration. But the proper long-term solution involves Transnet. And I think the minister has indicated in the past that there's a lot of work going on in the discussions with Transnet to move trucks, or at least the goods that most of the trucks are carrying, back to rail. For example, things like ore, either it's iron ore or any other chrome ore, any other ore, those ones should not actually be on the road. They should be on rail. Things like coal, for example, it should not be on the road. It should be on rail. And this is where it actually needs to go into in the long term. So these discussions and a lot of work is happening in the background. But for the foreseeable future, unfortunately, we will still have quite a number of trucks on our roads. The best we can do is where we can provide these climbing lanes, we will provide. Where law enforcement can assist us in making sure that trucks stick to the slower moving lanes, they actually will need to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I come across a driver who is behaving badly on our roads, whether it be a truck driver or it could be a small vehicle driver, is there an emergency line? Is there anywhere where one can quickly make a call in order for police officers to be alerted to that particular person? Well, what do we do in instances like that?
So in those instances, I think it's more of a question directed at law enforcement. But from our side, you realize that on the national road network, for any type of emergency, there are boards that we provide that provide, for example, details of where you can call when there's an incident. But remember, our role is a lot limited to the provision of the infrastructure itself.
Yeah.
So we will be able to act in that realm. But for the issues around the breaking of laws that are traffic related, for example, there are code numbers for the RTMC, or the Road Traffic Management Corporation, which manages what we can call the national police that can actually assist. There are also phone numbers for municipal or police that belong to municipalities. For example, the Tshwane Metro Police Department, the JMPD, and so on, where colleagues can also report depending on the jurisdiction that they are in. But from your question, maybe there's also room to look at how we can actually make that easier. So I think we'll look into that and see, maybe through our platforms, how we can make it easily accessible to travelers to be able to know who to call when they are traveling. But you will say a lot of the time there are notice boards with a lot of this information that you'll be able to see on our highways.
Progress Hlahla, thank you very much for that advice and indeed the information you have given us about the state of our roads as we head into this festive season. He is SANRAL's Northern Region Manager, and that incorporates a number of provinces, as you've already heard him say.